Hello, we're going to spend another section. This is lesson P-1 or the prerequisite chapter. It's on page 10. This is example 6. We're going to rewrite each expression without the absolute value bars. So let's look at the A. It is the square root of 3 minus 1. Now, because the square root of 3 is about 1.7, then the number inside the absolute value bar, if you were to subtract 1 here, is going to end up being positive. So that means that we don't have to take the opposite of it anyway. Therefore, the square root of 3 minus 1 ends up just being the square root of 3 minus 1. However, on B, which is this one right here, 2 minus the square root of, the absolute value of 2 minus pi, because pi here is about 3.14, then the number inside the bar, if you were to take 2 minus 3.14 here, that's going to give you a negative answer. So the absolute value, remember, when the answer ends up being below 0 or less than 0 here, then you take the opposite of that value. So that's why when they have the absolute value of 2 minus pi in the answer, then you use this negative right here. You end up using this negative right here, and you take the opposite of the 2 minus pi. Now, if I distribute that to those two numbers, it ends up being a positive pi and a negative 2. It really ends up being this right here, negative 2 plus pi, and so it just got rewritten as pi minus 2 there. Okay. Now, for the third one, this particular one says that when x is less than 0, or if x is less than 0, then the absolute value of x becomes negative x. Okay. So we're assuming that the value of x is less than 0, so therefore I'm going to substitute in negative x. So that's why this turns into this right here. And then negative x over the regular x ends up being a negative 1, because any number over itself, those would cancel, of course, to give you 1, but you still have your negative right there. So you end up with a total of negative 1. All right? So let's do a few of the got it's to see if you understand what we're saying. Now, the square root of 2 is a little bit more than 1. Therefore, if I were going to subtract 1 minus a number that's a little bit bigger than 1, then this is going to give me a negative value. So because it is, what I have to end up doing here is that I need to take the opposite. So I'm going to put a negative out here, and then I'm going to do 1 minus the square root of 2 in parentheses. Now, if I distribute that negative, I end up with negative 1 and then a plus the square root of 2. I can write it that way, or I can write the square root of 2 minus 1. Either one of these is okay, but that's what ends up being your final answer for that one. On B, however, you've got pi minus 3. Well, because pi right here is a little bit greater than 3, even when you subtract 3, that's going to remain positive. So I don't have to take the opposite of what's in the absolute value. It just ends up being pi minus 3 on that particular one. And then for example C, since x is greater than 0, or assumed, because it says if x is greater than 0, when I look at that number, when a number inside of there is greater than 0, then it's positive anyway, and the absolute value of that is simply just going to be x over x, which is the bottom term there, and any number over itself ends up just being positive 1. Okay, so that's how we work this particular problem. I hope this was helpful.